Welcome to month 6 of the Lead Dad Diaries with Skip Cherryholmes.
Are you
6.
serious? 6 months.
6. We're almost to halfway or midway to halfway. I don't know. Skip, can you believe it's been 6 months that we've been talking?
No, I can't. That blows my mind. Remembering back to like just even our first conversations, in general, the 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 fact that we're here at this point and that I'm here at this point where I'm at, with all of the changes going on, that's remarkable. I didn't know that whenever I got started with all of this that I'd make it 6 months. So I guess if I could make it the first 6 months, I can make it another 6 months, right?
Is that what you have on the Star Wars shirt? Is that like a celebratory Star Wars shirt for
Maybe
making?
so, maybe so. I
Because
have
the force is with you.
the force is absolutely thinking about hanging out with me. Yeah. um I have a closet full of Star Wars shirts. And I always, as one of those things, it's like I'm always looking for, I have a specific style that I really like. And it's not going to be something you're going to find in your typical department stores or Target or Walmart or whatever. I have to, like, I search like online, or Stephanie will search online for like really creative presentation of Star Wars. So like I have like a lot of, well, I've got,
Well,
coffee mugs, and I've
you got
got,
to slide back then. You got to slide back so we can see a
this is
little bit
like the
more of
the
what.
from the comic.
Oh, wow.
So this is probably one you can find around a little bit more, but I do like that it's like, it's the ultimate. Let me make sure I don't tear my desk apart while I'm trying to show you a t-shirt. Um but I like this style. It's got like the original comic cover and like all the
Yeah.
real cool things like that. So I dig that. I also like anything that will blend Star Wars and music, because obviously I'm big into music, and
Yeah.
that's not a very common one. But I have this really cool shirt, and I don't see it very often, even though I can't even remember where I got it, but it's Darth Vader and three stormtroopers doing the Abbey Road crossing, and I love it. It's very tasteful. I
Now,
like
of
it.
course, the music for Star Wars was scored by John
Williams,
Williams,
yeah.
one of the great composers, particularly, not just movies, but one of the great composers of 20th
Mm-hmm.
century. And that's what he's remembered for. I mean, he's remembered for all these great movies, but the music is phenomenal and dramatic. And I remember years ago, I grew up in Massachusetts. I was at this place called Tanglewood, which is where the Boston Pops goes in the summer. It's an open field.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. And he was there and playing, conducting, not playing, conducting. He's not, playing a instrument. He's conducting. And the band shell, the open air, and you felt like, and it was a beautiful night. And it felt like, are we about to watch Star Wars? What, or are we about to watch, Raiders of the Lost Ark? Or it was like,
Right. It's
happened
very
in,
emotional too. Gosh,
yeah.
it's so emotional. I am one of those people who will put on a soundtrack to a movie and just bask in it, literally. And so, when I get a score like that, you can even take away. That's how you know it's so inspired, is you can take all of the visuals away and still be left with the impact of the music. I saw a documentary years and years ago where they were showing the power of music in cinema, and how they literally took a scene that was very heavily dependent on the music, and then they removed they extracted the music and showed just how thin the scene was. Not that it was bad acting or anything like that. It's
Right.
just speaking to the power of the music in the scene. And that was, to see that, when I did, I was like, whoa, there's something really strong here. But then you do the reverse, take away the visuals, take away the sound effects, and you listen to the soundtrack itself. If you still have that emotional impact, that explains exactly how powerful that soundtrack is to that movie or show, whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
watching. So I dig stuff like that. So, and
No,
Star Wars
naturally,
definitely hits
you
that.
take the high-minded route, the deep knowledge. I got to dumb it down here because I think of like my youngest daughter. She loves this show called The Thundermans, which is like a total ripoff of another Pixar movie, The Incredibles. Um,
Mhm.
but it's so bad. No offense to any of the actors who were working really hard, but like I imagine like if you took the laugh track out, like just how it would be even worse because like the laugh track is one of those old school 1980s laugh tracks, like ha 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 ha, ha and like
They're depending on the contagion of the laugh track to actually make you think you're watching something funny.
that's exactly. And the sweetest part is my 6 year old and my father, her grampy, they watch it and they both laugh at the same time. I'm like,
Oh,
two peas in a
that's
pod,
precious.
two peas
I
in a
love
pod.
that. I love that.
It's the redeeming feature of the Thunderbirds, how it unites people who are separated by a good 70 years. So
Mm.
all right, Star Wars. We can talk about Star Wars forever, but we've got our 5 questions that we ask every month for the Lead
Hmm.
Diaries with Skip Cherryholmes. First one, as always, buddy. What's been the best part of the past month?
Well, I spoke to this. I feel like towards the end of the last episode, somewhere thereabouts, of how I was actually looking at a very simple month ahead. That coming out of August and coming out of the summer was kind of the wrap up of real craziness, and that September was going to be a little bit more evenly paced, and it was. So I would consider that. I would say that September was certainly the um the most domesticated I've ever felt since becoming, coming off the road and owning the lead dad position. Um just in the respect that we didn't have a bunch of extracurricular stuff going on. Weeks in and weeks out were pretty similar. And I consider that a good thing for a lot of reasons, because obviously with school starting too, we're homeschooling Aiden. I was able to be very hands on with him and kind of be a part of shaping that routine, and seeing the success out of it has been really gratifying. I know that the weather, the way that the weather changed was really nice, because it cooled off pretty much right in the middle of the month, and it actually felt like we were going to have a fall, which is not. It could still change. I mean, North Carolina has some of the most unpredictable weather, and in one day you can experience 79 seasons, um just based off of the where we're at with, in conjunction with the ocean, where we're at in conjunction with the mountains, the the north to south ratio. I mean, we're considered south, but so there's a lot of humidity, but then there's also a lot of wind, and it's just like the weather can't make up its mind. But we've actually gone through, I think last year, we might have had 2 weeks of cool weather in December. But outside of that, from August through March, nothing really changed as far as the weather went. So that, taking advantage of that, spending a lot of time outside with the kids, the obviously not dealing with a whole lot of pollen and all that stuff right now, bugs. Uh, so it's been nice. But yeah, I will say that it's been a very even keel kind of a month. Routines week in and week out have looked the same now. October, I can't say. I think that we saw our even keel month,
All
and
right.
and that kind of goes into what we talk about next, is the you want to say the worst part of the
The
last
worst part,
month.
and I've got to ask you this because we are talking
Yeah.
when people listen to this, we are talking in prime pumpkin spice season. So when people don't mention pumpkin spice as the best part of their month, is there a chance that it's going to end up in the worst, or do you just
i'm I
ignore pumpkin
ignore
spice?
I
No.
heavily ignore the pumpkin spice. I Okay, so there I went through a phase back when I was a teenager, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I've got to be the first one. Pumpkin spice comes out today at Starbucks," and it's like middle of August or whatever it was, and I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna get myself a latte. And it wasn't as common to like do the take a picture and post it on social media back then. But I would send a picture to friends, SMS, um, and all of that. And then and I'm probably I think I'm probably just going to cut your viewership on this series in half by proclaiming all of this, but I'm sorry, I don't get it. And I just the okay, yeah, if you like pumpkin spice and if that's your deal, that's wonderful. And I promote anything that's going to make somebody, if something that simple is going to make somebody's day, go for it. But I can't stand the smell of the candles. I can't stand the fact that every year they come out with something new. It's like, we've got pumpkin spice flavored windshield wiper fluid. Why? I don't get it. Or like the fruit roll up, pumpkin spice. No. Tortilla chips, pumpkin spice. It's just not my thing.
It's not exactly pumpkin spice, but I'm up in New England, and Sam Adams used to be a local beer. Now it's a national beer, and they would come out with this Oktoberfest, and you had to get it like end of September, and then pretty much it was done early November, and it was a treat. And I would, and I always remember like I grab one more 12-pack or something, and I'd stretch it out because I loved it. And now it's no treat because it's kind of like it's the beer equivalent of pumpkin spice. You can get it for
right
half the
and
year, and you're like, well,
forgive me for saying this if you disagree, but I feel like it doesn't taste the same that it did 10 years ago, personally.
well, you're right, but you think about like you go to like a farmer's market and you get vegetables that are in season, whatever they are, as opposed to you go to the grocery store in February and you buy a tomato, which is not,
Right.
not
Hey,
in season.
that's true. I never thought about it that way, but you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's You're pulling product that's not necessarily in season to extend the production of an item that really should be specified to a specific timeline.
right. So you got to be honest. So is pumpkin spice the worst thing that happened of the past month, or do we have other stuff
Oh,
that we want to talk
it's
about?
not. I mean, it's not the worst thing that's happened. I
It'd
just
be
kind of
okay if pumpkin spice
I
was the worst thing that happened.
ignore it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that'd be fine. I guess if that was my biggest struggle. Um, I will say it's funny because okay, yeah, it was great. We had a month at home, all this, kind of real even keel, but I felt like everybody was kind of ready for things to open up again, even the kids getting kind of stir crazy, just kind of being around. It's like, well, I think this is a good thing, and in a lot of ways it is a good thing, but then in a lot of ways it's showing itself that maybe we do need to be a little bit more or spontaneous or whatever you want to call it. Um, and that's more from just the day-to-day standpoint. That I did have an issue. I talked about it last time, um, where you remember I had the house fire issue, and so while that was kind of comical, I had inhaled, I think, a little more smoke than I thought I had, and my lungs were hurting pretty good towards the beginning of the month. And being a singer, especially, I sing at church on Sundays, and I was having a lot of trouble breathing. And so when you sing there, especially if you sing professionally, there is professional technique that you have to sing with, and it is been studied forever. And the purpose of the study is, excuse me, see, that's mental. That right there is mental. I'm sitting here thinking about it and it's making me cough. But sorry, yeah, it's contagious. But the technique is designed to save your voice. All of these amazing singers that have sung forever and ever and ever go through these rituals and routines and all of this to preserve their voice, because the voice can handle a lot only if you use it properly. And my mom was big on vocal exercises and proper technique and everything. And when my lungs not working at the capacity that they should, or being in pain in the capacity that they should, my ignorant self uh just tried to push through and found that I was shifting my technique to take the pressure off of my lungs, which therefore overextends my vocal cords. And I got about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got to where like I could barely get through a sentence without hurting. I couldn't talk. I definitely couldn't sing. I couldn't do a whole lot of things. So I it's kind of that whole, well, I'm using this cane because my one leg hurts, but now my other leg hurts because I've been putting so much pressure on it. That kind of thing, shifting the tension and the strain from my lungs to my vocal cords. And I ended up going on about 2.5 weeks of vocal rest. And I would go through a, a day or so without even speaking, unless it was just, I mean, you can imagine how difficult that is as a father. But I kept my talking, I kept my singing. Well, my singing, I was like, no, I'm not singing for the next couple of weeks. And then talking, I kept to a minimum, and definitely saw that. It's funny. Definitely saw the benefit from it. Because when I finally got back into it, I actually did a performance this past Friday up in Virginia. It was a one-off, something real fun and easy. And I was able to sing with no pain, no strain. And I could, because that's the other thing, is like you start singing with bad technique, you develop a bad habit, and it's a lot harder to break that bad habit. So the best thing to do is just stop altogether. Don't teach yourself the bad habit, and then you can go back to doing what you need to do. So that, I would say, was probably the worst part of this last month. But I will say that it was probably good that my month was very simple because of that. Because if I'd had let's say all of that happened, but I was this past August or this past July, I probably would have done some like permanent damage to my
Right.
voice. So glad I got through that, at least for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, for sure. And for listeners, this was, it was a grease fire in the kitchen, and,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And flour everywhere, and Jesus. Um, so the best, that's our third question, is always, what was the best lead dad moment of the past one? Is it that not speaking for 2 weeks, you didn't have to ever raise your voice with your kids, and they thought you were like, suddenly became like
No.
the most super calm parent ever? Or did you just gesticulate widely when you needed to tell them something?
Uh, I think I did use a lot more arm and hand gestures than normal. Um, I couldn't stand that. I couldn't really handle the things I needed to handle. That was hard for me. Um, I think that the best part of this last month, and I think the reason why it stood out to me so much, is because I feel like maybe it's something that can get overlooked in the day to day of families, but I got to do I got to take the time to and create the time to do a lot of really cool kind of normal things that I put a lot of value in, especially when it comes to my kids, like um, the even playing Legos with Aiden and not rushing around. Well, I've got a time frame that I got to do this. Oh, I like that. Um, that's I think you can easily take moments like that for granted, and then when the kids are older, you're like, well, I miss the days when they wanted to play Legos, you know. And the fact that I was able to take several different instances like that, or cooking. I smoked a beef brisket um one weekend. I think it was one of the first weekends I was like not really talking too much, but I was able to do that, and just kind of chill out. And I'm the type of person that when those moments come and I can actually feel the settle and the peace, that I acknowledge it. And I'm like, this is valuable. This is valuable to me. It it's few and far between, I think, in a lot of instances because of, I mean, there's so many things right now that I feel like have everybody, kind of doing this bit right here. And to actually feel moments of peace and acknowledge them and say, okay, this is amazing. And taking time with the kids, having that consistency of being home and doing what it was that we were doing, riding bikes and just going to get ice cream and stuff like that. I know it's simple stuff. And I do feel though that especially as they get older, I'm going to be thankful that I've taken this time and didn't just buzz through everything. So being, I know that's not necessarily a pinpointed lead dad moment, but as the overall atmosphere of being a lead dad and taking time where it's appreciated and then appreciating the time that I've been given. It was powerful this last month, in the slowness and everything. I loved, I remember when I was working outside in the yard, and I get Aiden out there, and he said the coolest thing. He was talking to my wife Stephanie, and he said, I want to be like dad and do more things like dad does. He said, I don't want to do 5-year-old things. But like that, obviously to me, that first of all, it means he's paying attention. That's a big one. But two, it means that, because sometimes as parents, as dads, you can feel like your main purpose is to either interject discipline, break up fights, obviously work, provide, whatever the case is. Speaking, obviously from my standpoint here, but to actually hear your son, your daughter, whoever, audibly recognize that, hey, dad's cool. Dad does cool things. Dad knows how to do a lot of things, whatever the case is. That was heavy for me. That was really cool. And obviously, I talk about this often, but going back to thinking about what that conversation would have looked like, or that comment would have looked like if I'd have been on the road, I don't know that the topic would have even come up, because by and large, he never really witnessed my work on the road. But I definitely, if the topic would have even come up, that conversation would have been a FaceTime conversation. That'd have been me, phoning it in from across the country. So the fact that all of this transpired and I was there to witness it, be a part of it, speak to it, and all of the things that came into play there were really, really strong for me, and it gave me a lot of motivation to continue to be that guy,
I love it. And I just, one caveat here for the listeners. When he was saying, I want to do things like dad, that did not include nearly setting the kitchen on fire, correct?
No.
Good. Okay, good.
No, at least I hope not. Because if it did, we got a bigger problem.
We got bigger problems.
That would be a conversation I'd hear more out of my daughter. My little girl, she's sweet. She's cute as a button. She is so precious. She's mean. She's really, I actually, I've got, you can see a little mark there.
Yeah.
I have it covered with makeup because Stephanie was like, you can't go on that call. Adeline just came up and she just dug her thumbnails into my cheeks like this. And then I was like, Adeline, that hurts. And she's like, oh, it hurts? I was like, geez, you're mean. She doesn't
It's a funny,
she's
like the so strange, but it's when kids can hurt you and they don't, and you think like they're so small and they do something like, oh my goodness, that really hurt. And like,
Yeah, well, that
like
part of it
that,
was a shock enough, but it's the
yes.
part where she laughs and is like, "Oh," and then, so yeah, from her, I would expect, "Oh yeah, I want to be like Dad. I want to start a fire." Yeah, of course I'm joking,
Well,
but she's
that dovetails nicely into what's been your most challenging lead dad moment of the past month. Hopefully, it's not your sweet little daughter coming up
no. I mean, as of all of this, the hardest thing with her that I feel like we're finally maybe making a breakthrough on is the sleep. I've spoke to it a lot, I think, over the last few months, not getting any sleep because she's not sleeping and all this, and we've tried a lot of different things, and I think we're on to something right now. Um, but it did bring up the point. That was this is kind of a if you want to call it the hardest or the most challenging lead dad moment, but also like a harsh realization. You especially you'll understand, Paul. I'm sure when you've had your children, you have your first kid, and the first thing you do is you have all these expectations before he's born or before she's born of all of the things you just know you've got a grip on, which you quickly find out isn't the case. You're like, well, that didn't go how I thought. But you also have like these things like, well, let's talk about the sleep thing. Whether they're gonna sleep in their own bed, and they're gonna sleep as long as they want to. Well, obviously, we've realized that also isn't the case, especially with my children. And I hear these stories of these parents are like, oh yeah, he just woke up to eat and then went right back to sleep. I'm over it. But the the other, I can't remember what it was. It was like maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, because yeah, 2 weeks ago, and it was bedtime and she was not having it, and I was listening to Stephanie because we like swap off. Sometimes she'll listen to Stephanie and not me. Sometimes she'll listen to me and not Stephanie. And usually whoever is the one who starts out trying to deal with her is the one she rejects. And the one that comes in behind is the one she'll listen to because it's a better option than the one she rejected. And that's rotation every night. But I sat in there listening and I was like, it's amazing how different things look from the time before you had your first child and all the plans that you thought you would have and all of the things you thought you had figured out. And now all of the compromises you are willing to make to just accomplish a single goal. And like like some of the things, it's like even in the early stages of parenthood with one child, and you're wanting to make sure, oh, we got to make sure everything's baby proofed and everything's this and everything's that, and you can't this, it has to be this way, has to be that way. And then with the second child, obviously a lot of people say that it relaxes a little bit. There was one night when she refused to sleep in her own bed, and she kept getting up and she kept getting up, and finally she got so exhausted and she laid down on the floor next to her bed. And that was her way of saying, I'm not going to sleep in my bed. And I looked at Stephanie, she looked at me. I was like, you want to move her? She's like, take that chance. So we left her there. We have a good carpet. I mean, it's fine. But I wasn't going to move. And I was just like, there's no way we would have ever done that with Aiden because, well, it's the first child. Things have to be a certain way. And it's like, well, he can't sleep on the floor next to his bed. He's got to sleep in his bed and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, so tired. She's sleeping. That's fine. And then she woke up like an hour and a half later and she was mad again. So put her back in bed. So, that whole process has been very challenging, and those realizations became very, very real over this last month.
I know exactly what you're saying because we have three daughters, and so we don't even have the gender different. And the first one, there's no way she was sleeping in our bed. I would go in there and I would, get her back in bed. I'd lay with her. I wouldn't fall asleep and all this. Second one, she was up all the time. I would go get in the bed, lay with her, but I would end up falling asleep because by the second one I was tired, so I would end up sleeping in her bed. And the funny part is, the first one I bought a really cheap mattress because I thought it's a small child, we don't need a really cheap mattress. Second one, much nicer mattress because I realized I'll actually be sleeping in there. The mattress isn't for her, it's for me. The third one, she comes into bed and I don't even care, because you're
Like
just
anything so you can get some sleep too.
yeah, I just move over a little bit. She's small. She doesn't take up a lot of room. So,
Yeah, it's very similar with Adeline. We got a really nice mattress because like, well, maybe if she has a nice mattress, she'll sleep better. And like, it'll encourage her to, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, not so much.
The
And
mattress is for us. That's who the mattress is for.
right. Well, in her, she's sleeping in like a crib, like a pretty large crib. So then we took the rails off the crib because she started doing the whole climbing up over the
Oh, yeah, the
rails
flip
and
out.
trying
Yeah,
to
yeah,
flip off
yeah.
the side of the thing. So we took the rails off. Well, that just gave her license to kind of get up and not stay contained and do as she pleased and all that. And I want everybody to do what they're supposed to do. And it's easy to feel like a failure as a parent when there's so many consecutive nights of unrest and things not going well. And you're like, well, could I be doing something better? What am I not doing? Like all this. And that's why I think it's really cool, especially, if you allow, when it comes to even just the company of dads and understanding that, sometimes hearing these same stories from other parents, other dads, especially, makes you realize that you're not that far off the
Right.
mark.
You're not alone. I mean, we're all
You're
just trying
not
to figure
alone
it.
in
Yeah.
this process. You've got some bumps that we've all been through and all that. It's been very encouraging. I know that last little roundtable that we had with
Mm-hmm.
the other gentleman that hopped on there,
Yeah.
um, the back to school thing,
Yeah.
was really cool for me because you're hearing real life stories from real life dads that are going through the same things, the same challenges.
Well,
And
you talked about the comparison of like your son asking you to play Legos, and at some point he won't ask you anymore. I mean, our girls still get out of bed, but for whatever reason, we read somewhere about buying these sleep sacks for them. I don't know if your kids ever slept in them, but literally, it's like a
yeah,
zip up sack,
yeah,
and that way they can't throw the blankets off. They can't, and it keeps them warm. And they're really cute in the beginning because they literally look like a sack of
look
flour.
like a
Then they
little,
get bigger and
yeah,
bigger. Yeah, and then but what I miss is when they would get out of bed, they'd still have these sleep sacks on, and so they kind of shimmy down the hallway like Casper the Friendly
like a
Ghost or something
pillowcase
like that.
race.
Exactly, pillowcase race or Casper, and they'd have like their lovey and their pacifier, and then they come to your bed, and at the moment you're like, oh my goodness, you're waking me up, I can't believe it. Now I would miss that because now they come in as big kids, and they take up a lot more space. And
Yeah. I miss like Aiden when he was little, when he woke up and it was time for like he was awake, he still needed a good 30-40 minutes of chilling out before he was ready to do a whole lot. It's like I'm
yeah,
awake, but get me a snack and I'm gonna sit here, and when I'm ready to actually kick into gear, I'll let you know. And it was about 30-40 minutes usually, and
yeah.
that meant 30-40 minutes of additional sleep if you could,
Oh
if you
yeah,
had that
and
kind of
you
time.
go back to sleep like that. Like there's
Right.
no yeah.
But now he wakes up on bust. Like he's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm ready to go. It's time to do stuff. The we've already wasted too much of the day. I don't know what the sleep deal is all about, but I'm ready to move forward with the day. And I think that's wonderful. I mean, he's a high energy kid, and I love that. And
Yeah.
but it's the gone are the days when he would just kind of snuggle up to you and just like. Now he'll do that a little bit more with mom,
Yeah.
uh, even as big as he is. I measured him yesterday and he's 4 feet tall. He's 5 years old. I'm like, oh my goodness, dude.
Wow.
He's growing.
That's a tall kid.
Yeah, he's a very tall kid. But he he's very, very active, but he's still mama's little guy. You know, he's not too big to snuggle with her, and he probably never will be, and she will never deny it. Like
Yeah, yeah, of course.
she'll take it every time,
Of
and
course.
I'm glad. That kind of goes into you know, lessons learned.
Fifth
Um,
question. Any lessons learned? Yep. Yep.
yeah, any lessons learned? Yes. Um, Change is inevitable, but that doesn't mean that it's, you know, a bad thing. You have to, you know, you're going to stay on your toes. I realized, again, going back on this month, I realized that my change, the thing that I've done to put myself back at home, was at a time when there's still so much development going on with my kids. I know a few different guys who have done this same thing, but you know, their kids are already in their teens, and they're, you know, or you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they're not going through as many of the developmental changes that a 2-year-old's going through. You know, I still got one that's about to be out of diapers, so there's all of that. So I'm like, I'm learning a lot in this process, and things are constantly changing. Um, but you know, like we were just talking about, and kind of, you know, the foundation of the company of dads and all of that, you can't let that discourage you. Just because you don't have a grip on that change does not mean you are necessarily failing. You know, it's easy to feel that way. It's easy to feel like you don't have a grip on anything. And then your son, your daughter, somebody will come up to you and tell you that they really want to be like you. And you feel for a moment like, okay, maybe things aren't as terrible as I perceive, or I know it's crazy, because my son he's very social, and he's very well spoken, if I might add. So we go out in public, and he can hold very good conversations and whatnot. And I'll have somebody come up, well, your son, he really does well, speaking well, and he's very well thought, and all of that. And you're like, okay, I'm not necessarily losing on all fronts. But it can feel like that sometimes with the amount of change that goes on. And I think it's important, again, kind of tying everything together, that when you have the opportunity to um, to have those peaceful moments, they may not come very frequently, or they may come in seasons where you have a certain season. Right now, I feel like September was a season where I had more moments like that than I've had in a very, very long time. Um, don't push through them. Don't let them make you feel uncomfortable. Absorb them, because they may not last very long. They may last an hour, they may last a day, they may last 5 minutes. Rather recognize them and acknowledge the fact that even though you don't know when the next one may come, that, you know, things, the change and the chaos and all of that, those little oases, that's a word, right? Oases, or is it oasi? I don't know which plural it is,
We're
but
gonna go with Oasis.
oases,
Yeah.
they really, they are your refreshing points, and you need to take care of them, and acknowledge them, and don't rush past them, because, you know, that's, otherwise it's just grind, and beating your head up against the wall, and that can be very discouraging. So yeah, I've big lessons learned over this past month.
Skip Cherryholmes. Always great to have you on the company of dads for Lead Dad Diaries with you, Skip Cherryholmes.
I
So
love it.
thank you again. Another great update. Looking forward to checking in again next month. I got an idea for people who listen to this. Maybe have a special guest on with Skip next month, but we'll talk about that
Okay,
off camera and let you all know.
that'd be cool.
All right. Thanks again, buddy.
All right, take care.